Welcome back to the Act Two podcast, a podcast for the real-life working screenwriter. I'm Tasha Hugh.
And I am Josh Hallman.
You know, Josh, the other day, I was perusing our episode titles just to see if we had a certain topic, because we are notorious for forgetting the topics we've discussed. And I realized I had not rated our podcast yet, our own podcast.
Is that right?
So I clicked 5 stars.
That's good.
And then I realized someone left 4 stars. And I feel like I have to talk to this person, and I need to figure out why we did not get that elusive 5th star.
You know, that is a very weird rating to give, because you either hate something and you're like, I hate them, here's a 1.
Yeah. I'm not listening to them ever again.
Never. Or we appreciate you and you give us a 5 because that helps out the podcast. And then you're good with Tasha and I when you give the 5.
Yeah.
But then a 4 is like, that's like giving notes on a script and you're like, it's okay.
Yes. You know what it is? It's CBB. Could be better.
Could be better.
That's what a 4 is.
And there's not a specific reason why it's not better.
See, this is what got me going a little bit, was that there was no like 4-star and then here's my review. It was just like CBB.
So Mr. or Mrs. 4-star, if you're listening, please email us and tell us why. I don't think people are supposed to take these things so personally.
We just want to be better. Just like writers, when we get a note and we're like, oh, we don't want you to have a note here. We just want you to enjoy your reading experience. We would love you to enjoy your listening experience. Yeah. So how can we be better? And if it's that I should laugh less or something, or like tell less jokes, I'm not sure we'll gain that 5th star.
Yeah. Be specific. Yeah, it'll probably be, I don't like Josh's voice.
We can't do anything about that one. I guess we can in today's AI age, maybe.
Oh.
It just almost threw up. Okay. I don't know where to go from there. Okay, today we are talking about week.
I heard something crazy. It's about, we're going to talk about AI today. So maybe I'm going to save it. Okay.
This week we're talking about This Week in Writing.
This Week in Writing.
Who wants to start?
Oh, we're just diving in.
I think so.
I'm going to start.
Okay.
I'm going to keep this light.
Okay.
Because Tasha has finally seen the greatest movie of all time. That is an animated movie about Mario. The Mario Brothers movie.
Wait. Is it the greatest movie that falls under the bucket of animated movies about Mario?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And you finally saw it.
I did.
We've been building it on this podcast for weeks now because you hadn't gone out and experienced it.
That's true. I was late. And the internet says that it is the most successful video game movie of all time.
Yeah.
So it's worth talking about.
It's worth talking about.
I came in, as we know from last episode, angry that this movie had so much cred, and I was fully prepared to dislike it. Now, I've liked, again, all the Mario games, except for Mario Kart, and the Mario live action movie. I was even here for that. Right?
Wow.
So this movie, yeah. And I actually really liked this movie. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was along for the ride. I laughed. I thought that the Mario sort of nods to the game were really great. I thought they were far more literal than I expected, and I got very kind of what's the word? I turned my nose up at their literal interpretation of the game, because I'm always trying to find ways to bring in elements of the video game and kind of hide them within the story. So you're watching and you're like, oh shit, that's just from the game. But it also feels like this character is just doing something they would normally do from the game. But someone who's a fan would kind of point it out. But in Mario, this movie, they literally just have a level that Mario has to run. And I was like, this is stupid. And then I watched it. I was like, all right, this is kind of cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, I was curious, as someone who handles adaptations and someone who operates in this world as a writer, that I wanted to get your opinion on this.
What'd you think when they started going real literal with it?
I was like, this is awesome. They threw in the kitchen sink on this movie for sure.
Did.
Like
they really did.
I was actually surprised that they incorporated like the Mario Kart aspect into Mario, because one could see that being like a second movie where it's just like a racing movie or something like that. But they just threw in everything. Clearly it worked because it's a very successful movie.
Yeah. What's funny is we have a friend who was like, I wish there was more Mario Kart. And I was like, the whole second half of the movie is basically a Mario Kart movie.
I actually wish there was
the last
a little
third.
bit more Mario Kart. I think so. I have a note. This was it.
Yeah.
A couple episodes ago, I was like, I have a Mario note. I feel like we were a little light on the Bowser. I can't even believe I'm about to go this deep into Mario. The relationship with Bowser and the princess and Peach, the Princess Peach. I was wondering about her. I was like, where'd she come from? She's a human. They just kind of glossed over it. Maybe that's what the second movie's all going to be about. But I wanted more, and I felt I felt like, you know, Bowser was he just wanted to marry her. It's like, maybe could we get like a little more depth to that?
Like, why now?
Why?
I mean, she looks like she's in her 20s at least. So, I mean, maybe he was waiting for her to come of age. I don't know. That's where did this obsession with her start? Did they know each other? Have they met before? Is that why he liked her?
Yeah, that's what I'm so happy you brought this back on the tracks, because it went off there for a second. And yeah, that's what I was wondering. I feel like if there could have been a little more development in that relationship. Again, can't believe I'm saying this because of how enjoyable the movie is, and it's a movie really geared towards kids. But I think, is it? No, it's for adults.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loved it. I went with just a bunch of adults, and we all loved it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So anyway, I'm glad you loved it.
I'm not done talking about this.
Okay, great.
I also was upset when Princess Peach says, "Oh my gosh, Mario, you're a human," and then just continued on with a different conversation, as you were saying, because that is the story. Like, that's the meat. That is character stuff. I want to know, why is she drawn to Mario? And it's because maybe he has a connection to a past she's been wondering about her whole life, because she fucking lives in an entire country full of mushroom people, not humans. And this is the first human she's ever seen.
Totally.
But she just blows over it. And that kind of upset me. The Bowser thing didn't upset me as much, but it upset me a little bit. I had questions. I guess I shouldn't say I was upset. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, movie was like a 9 out of 10 in terms of experience for me. And that extra star that it's missing was simply these two moments that I'm talking about. And I think this movie does a great job at emphasizing something we talk about on the podcast a lot, which is how simple stories are kind of all you need to tell a great story. You just build a world around it. You have really great comedy involved. I think if they added that character dimension, it would really put it over the top. But the story is so simple. Bowser is going from point A to point B to marry Princess Peach. Mario is going from point A to point B to rescue his brother. And B is where Bowser is. So he is inevitably running right towards our villain. And that's it. That's the story, folks.
I loved it.
And it's great.
Yeah, and I thought it was really clever how they addressed like the gloves on Mario. Mushrooms. Maybe not mushrooms. That was a little, I don't know. But there was a lot of clever things that they did, and they just went past it. Like, hey, we wear gloves because we wear gloves. Moving on. And
because it was like his costume for his ad.
It was like a calling card. I loved it.
Calling card. I love
commercial,
that. Yeah, it's his calling card.
All of it. And I loved the way it was shot. It was like a video game. It was, So yeah.
My favorite part of the whole movie, and then we can move on, is when they're in the real world and Mario is leading Luigi. They're running to their first job. And if they screw up this job, then they'll never work again. And so they're running through New York, and it's a side scroller, and he's like doing all the things he does in the game, but like through a New York City street and through construction. And that to me was like, oh, they're doing that nod to the game, and that's so fun. So then when they did it literally later, I was like, this is cheap. But then I still liked it.
I loved it. And you know what's so great about that moment? Because I do think that was a really important moment, is that, yes, it was a nod to the game, but it showed how capable Mario was. It showed that Luigi was always one step behind, and it was just very enjoyable.
Yeah.
The moment after that, by the way, with that dog.
Yeah.
That dog was so funny to me.
It's pretty great.
I loved it.
All right. Thank you for listening to us about Mario. Go see it if you haven't seen it. It's quite fun.
Yeah. Go.
My turn? Okay. So I've been thinking lately about writers and how we take notes.
This
What?
just shifted.
It's a big shift. It's
So
a big
fast.
shift.
Yes.
And there are 3 types of writers who I have sort of pinpointed that I wanted to talk about. One version is a writer who, as soon as you start to give notes, you can tell like their entire body stiffens. They get like, they physically get tighter. And they're just like, and they're like they're typing your notes. They're, really listening to you, but no, like no other responses, no engagement beyond that. You can tell they've put up a very protective shell, and they don't seem necessarily angry, but they seem, you can definitely feel like you are upsetting their world dynamic by giving them these notes. And as a note giver, that becomes very difficult because A, it's not a conversation with this person. They're just closed up. And B, you start to feel like you're doing something wrong, right? And you may be like, okay, maybe I don't want to give them as many notes, but they need these notes. They need to know what's working and what's not working. So, but now I'm afraid to give them notes because I don't want to ruin their life, which is what it seems like we're doing. So if you're either of those people in that scenario, I feel like loosen up if you're receiving the notes. And notes should be a conversation. It should be, oh, I hear you. Oh, that's interesting. Well, what if I did this? Which leads me to the second writer that I've noticed over time is the writer who does more engagement. So like I give you a note, Josh, and this feels like how we are in writers group because we become so comfortable with each other and it's not, we don't really take things personally. So this kind of writer is typical in our writers group where you'll get a note and you'll be like, oh, that's interesting that you felt that way there. Can you talk a little bit more about it? Meaning like, can you give me more of the note behind the note or explain to me where your note is coming from? And then I might like pitch back an idea, be like, well, would this work here if this is what you're talking about? And I love that kind of writer because I feel like there's a back and forth. We're collaborating. We're coming up with ideas in the moment. And I also feel like that writer is not angry at me. They're not taking things personally. They're understanding that there's a problem. That's another thing with the person who's really tight. Like I don't know if they're understanding the note I'm giving them because there's no feedback. They're just typing the note. So if they type the note and then they go home later to try to address it, I'm not sure if they understood my note because they just wrote down exactly what I said. Are we going to have to talk about it later? Because anyway, so I do feel like the second writer is sort of the sweet spot where we're engaging in the moment. And also that kind of writer tends to be someone who's like, because I'm talking to you about what your note behind the note is, I understand it. And now don't worry about it. I will fix it when I get home. I'll think about this exact note behind the note and I got you. And as like, let's say a studio executive, a producer, a showrunner, if you have a writer who engages with you that way, and even if they don't give you a solution in the moment, but they say, I hear what your note is, let me think on it. I think I can come up with a solve. That makes me feel so much better. I'm put at ease because I know you've got it handled and you've heard what the note is. So that is, again, that in the like Goldilocks and the Three Bears scenario, like that's the sweet spot you want to be in. And then another writer I've noticed over my time is a kind of writer who, we've talked about this actually a couple episodes ago, a writer who takes notes literally because they want you, they're like, oh, you have a note? Okay, give me the literal note and I will do that exact note. Yeah. And you're like, well, I want you because you're a writer, I don't know, if I'm a studio executive and I've hired you to write this movie, I'm going to give you a note that, I'm not sure if Bowser has enough of a backstory here. Like I have questions about where he's coming from. And if the writer's like, well, where do you want him to come from? I don't know. Like you're the writer, you figure it out. I'm just letting you know that I have this question about where he comes from. Yeah. So if you're the kind of writer who is also like, give me your exact notes and I will execute them. That's also not what your boss or the people hiring you for this project are looking for either. So this is just something I've been thinking a lot about. And there's this Goldilocks sweet spot. Yeah. And that's it.
That's great. That's great. As you were saying that, I was thinking about myself naturally. And I think sometimes I come off as writer number one because I'll just sit there and I'm taking it in. And sometimes it takes me a little bit to digest a note. Or maybe the note that is being delivered is a lot and I'm trying to work through what that person is actually trying to say. So it's somewhere between 1 and 2. But I've actually worked on not being the person who just sits there and just listens. But that's what I want to do. That's like my natural instinct is to.
Because is it because you're absorbing it all in the moment and you just need to process? I
want to offer a intelligent solution or something that we can bounce off of, not something that's just for fluff.
Yeah.
And then since you know your script so well, you have to think of the ramifications it's going to have. And
sure.
Right, well, that's a first act note. So how's that going to play off in the third act? And then that'll change my midpoint a little bit. And then you're figuring all of this out before you respond.
Within seconds. Yeah.
Within seconds.
Sure.
So I've been working on me just going, Although mostly in writer's group, I'll just write things down.
Yeah.
And then I'll just, chime back at everyone. But I feel like you are definitely living in number 2.
I live at number 2, and I'm pausing because I'm wondering if I was number 1, because I very much feel like when I started, but for a long time, that's just my personality. Is like I take a long time to process information.
Yeah.
And I cannot come up with a solution typically in the moment. Although I will say, having to do it more and more often, working on projects with other producers who are kind of demanding it over the phone. And I say demanding, and I don't mean that way, but like they're opening up the conversation and like, let's kick ideas around on the phone. And I'm like, ugh, I just want to be by myself to solve this problem.
Totally.
But I can't. So it's actually teaching me how to be better at coming up with solutions that may not be perfect. They usually are not, but there's like a quarter of it that's a good idea that we can build off of. So I've gotten better at kind of conversing and being in the world of number 2, but I agree. I've always been a number 1 kind of person. But your point is valid. I think you do have to work on it. It's like a skill, like we talk about with pitching. It's not maybe innate in most of us as, quiet, sort of introverted writers. But if you work on it, the more you work on it, the better you get at it. I think it's worth working on, honestly, because it does put studio executives, producers, the people who hire us and want to rehire us, it puts them off and it makes them feel like you're not fun to work with or you're not listening to them. And that can really prevent them from wanting to work with you again.
Totally. And to be clear, my natural instinct is to be number 1. But I've always worked on the number 2 version of being like, okay, that's interesting. Okay, I'll think about that. Think about that.
And sometimes it's helpful to just like repeat what they said in your own words, because that at least is telling me you're processing it in your own way and you're understanding it. Because if you then repeat my note and I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I was talking about. It's actually this. You're like, oh, okay. Then there's just something that happens in you just simply repeating it that I go, oh, Josh has understood the note and he's going to execute it properly because he's able to understand and articulate what my idea is.
Notes are so interesting.
There's
so many levels to notes.
And it's such a key part of our job. Like how we receive notes is so freaking important. It's crazy.
Recently, I had a phone call with someone. I was getting notes that I think I probably sounded very defensive, but I wasn't. But I caught myself. I messaged you about it. And sometimes getting general notes is hard. Let's just put it that way.
Yep, because we've definitely gotten notes. We've all gotten those notes where they're super general. Like, I don't like... Your villain is not likable. Oh, okay. I can't go home and fix that problem right now with just that information. I need more information. So you do unfortunately have to challenge the other person to be like, oh, like where do you find them unlikable? Maybe. Or like what scene do you really feel that? So just like try and engage and like pull out information.
Yeah.
But the trick is you have to do it even though you feel personally attacked because you spent so much time on this villain. And that feels like an offhand note that they just squirt out. Like you still you have to like pretend that you're very kind and collaborative in that moment when you definitely don't feel it. So it's a lot of song and dance in our job.
And here's the last thing about this is if you're working with someone and you're getting notes, unless you're in a writer's group, presumably you're all in it together. You're with a producer, you're with an executive, you're with someone. So you're all wanting to make something great. You want to make it the best version it can be. So sometimes getting defensive in those scenarios isn't necessary because you're almost hurting yourself. You're setting yourself back by being someone who just wants to like burn it all down and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. As a writer, you just need to manage whoever you're talking to.
Yep. Can I do a small tangent?
Oh my God, yeah.
I was talking to my manager yesterday because just like things come up with different jobs that I have that I go to her and I just like kind of vent about certain things. And she had really great advice where she's worked with some very difficult people in her career, different directors and different like really big producers and very different personalities, all of them difficult in their own way. And she was just kind of conveying to me that every job, Tasha, is going to be different. You're going to have very different personalities on every single job that you have. And part of your job as the writer is to manage those personalities. And so we talk a lot about on this podcast skills that are not writing that you need for a screenwriting career. And your example of that phone call is a perfect example. And the word you said, manage, is just what triggered me because you do have to manage various personalities. And it could be anything from extreme narcissism to like mousy and quiet who doesn't tell you what they think until it's too late and you're in production already and you somehow still have to fix it. Like that whole spectrum is people you will have to learn how to manage respectfully and impress and all those things. So it's so important to really work on these things. That's all I want to say because I'm still working on it and it's really hard.
That's a very important thing though. It's very freaking important. Moving on.
Yeah, to a not happier topic.
Well, I have one more thing, a thing. This is actually probably a little more uplifting. One of my projects got put on pause because of the writer's strike.
I was all ready to be happy.
I know, me too. No, so it happened. I have this, there's this one script this spec that I had been working on that came back into my life, which I've talked about before. You and I were just talking about, I'm going to bring the producer on sometime in the future to talk about how like projects can kind of come back into your life. So I finished the spec. I'm like, this is great. I was really happy with it. And then sent it to the reps and we were trying to attach talent and it's taking a little while for a read. And I was kind of like, man, this is taking a little longer than normal. And so I would check with the producer. He's like, yeah, it's a little slow, but there's a lot going on. It's okay. Don't worry. We're still on top of it. I'm like, great. You know, I checked in with my agent because I got the sense like at this point, I feel like writers get into this scenario sometimes where you kind of already know the answer to something. And in my head, I was like, this project's dead. It's dead. The producer's like, it's not dead. We haven't sent it to a million places yet. But the point being is I ended up getting word that we felt like it was best to maybe just put a pause on everything right now because of the strike, people aren't buying certain things.
Yeah.
A lot of talent's getting sent a lot of things. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Oh, interesting.
So there was a bunch of reasons. In my head, naturally, I'm like, what you're really saying is my script sucks. But
no, Joshua, it's nothing to do with that.
Of course, that's where your head goes. But anyway, that was, and when that happened, I was like, I guess my optimism is just taking a little bit of a hit.
You're that clip from the Martin McDonagh movie. Well, I guess there goes another dream.
Oh, okay. That was good dreaming for a little bit. So
no,
anyway.
it'll come back. It'll come back. That's an interesting point though about talent being sent a lot of stuff because all they can do in the event of a strike is produce movies. So yeah, it's a desperate attempt to go into production fast.
Yeah.
So well, you know what? If there's a strike, there's an end to a strike, and your script will be ready to go.
That's what I like to hear. That's the optimism. When it comes back, I'm like, everyone forgot about it. It's done. No one cares.
No, the producer won't let it die.
No,
he's invested too much time.
I won't let him let it die.
You'll play tennis with him, and you'll be like, "Where's my fucking script?"
That's literally the last couple times we've played tennis. I'm like, "So, what's up?" And I can tell he just wants to play tennis.
He's like, "Oh God, Josh is here again."
Nick will be coming on. He'll be on here soon.
That'd be great. I love Nick. Okay.
Right.
Happier topic.
Go.
Disney's laying off 7,000 people this week.
Shit.
A friend of Paul's, my husband's, also editor of the podcast, works at Marvel, and we went to Disneyland. She took us to Disneyland because they get, these amazing free tickets to Disneyland, and on Sunday, and she's like making these jokes throughout the day. I felt so bad for her. She's like, "Could be the last hurrah, guys. We may never be able to come back." You never know. And she's saying her boss has said that, their department is safe, but no one's fucking safe. No one knows. And my heart goes out to everyone at Disney. It's so scary. Particularly confusing is that Disney is making so much money.
Yeah.
And how do you let people go when you're making so much money? And this is all a Wall Street thing. It's stuff that I don't care to understand, though I probably should care more. But it's a lot of sort of making Wall Street happy. And I hate that being the reason why so many people are losing their jobs.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah. I don't know what it means for us in the entertainment world, writers. It does seem like everyone's just kind of trimming back on content and cutting back on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Which affects us, but it's a weird time, man. I don't know.
I don't know either. What's interesting to me, ever since I was an assistant at Universal, just coming from a writer's perspective solely, is that we fear producers or studio execs. There's something we writers have where it feels like they're the boss, and also that they are the sort of holders of knowledge. Like what their notes are, they must be right because they're studio executives. And we have to do what they say, which in some ways is true because they're the ones paying all the money to get it done. So they want it done a certain way. Sure. Okay. I get that. But there have been so many times from when I was an assistant to now working myself that you invest in a project and then that executive gets laid off and they're gone. And they're gone. And they're just at another company. Maybe they're doing the same thing. Maybe they're not. A lot of people go into real estate when they leave this industry and they're just out. And then suddenly your project is either dead or it has a new studio executive who's like, I want this to be about moms instead of dads because I have an issue with my mom that I really want to work out in this show that I'm not writing, but you are. And so suddenly it has to take a new direction. And there's countless stories about this happening. And so I don't know. I don't know if that's even an appropriate detour to make. But as a writer, just trying to process what this means for us, it does mean that, your executive could possibly change and your project could either be at risk or it could take a new direction. And that sucks for writers as well. That's the trickle-down effect.
It sucks for everybody. I don't like people getting laid off.
I don't like it either. And to be so scared of it, to know, the whole world knows, right? This has been in the trades, it's been in the news, and to just have no idea if it's you or not.
The only positive, maybe not the only positive, but a positive is that a lot of executives, if people get fired, the really resilient ones, they bounce back and they either start doing their own thing, they become more motivated. I think, listen, I don't want anyone to get fired. But when you get beat down, you either stay down or you just fucking bounce right back up and come back even stronger. And sometimes when you come back stronger, it can birth something greater and better, and you're doing your own thing. And I'm gonna hope that that's the case for a lot of people, but it sucks.
Yeah,
we need to definitely move on to something uplifting.
Okay, I got one. Streamers are now releasing movies in theaters, and that might be here to stay. They are making so much more money by only releasing a movie in theaters before bringing it to their streaming platform, which fucking duh. But there's this article in AP News inspired by Air, written by Act2 writer Alex Convery, who is awesome. And they're talking about how they did a test screening of Air they being Amazon. And they found it was so highly rated in their test screenings that they're like, what would you say to releasing this in theaters? And they'd absolutely not planned on doing that. And so they released it in theaters, and it has a 5-day debut of $20.2 million.
Okay.
Which this is an adult drama. So that's a pretty big number for, not being a tentpole 4-quadrant movie like we talked about a few weeks ago. And then they're eventually going to release Air on Prime Video, and the studio is hopeful that the theater launch of Air then actually makes the streaming launch even more popular and bring more people to Amazon Prime, because they're like, oh, that was that huge movie that got released with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon that was so popular in theaters. That's like a big event. I need to go to Amazon Prime to see that movie.
Yeah. First of all, duh. Yes, everyone wants to see. It's hard to say, though, because there are certain movies that I could see that just should go straight to streaming. I get it. I really do. Which sucks. But also, we need more movies in theaters. So Air launched in 3,507 screens, which is the biggest release ever by a streamer. And Amazon said they are planning to release 12 to 15 movies theatrically now every year. Like, this has set the stage for this kind of release schedule for them, which, like, we're back, baby, right? Like 12 to 15 movies just from Amazon. I think
Apple
so.
apparently is set to spend $1 billion a year on movies that will go to cinemas before it goes to streaming, which is amazing. It's a lot of money. And I think what they're finding is that, yes, having a movie in a theater is basically free-ish advertising. Like, you can do all the advertising in the world for Red, the next Red Notice movie is what I meant to say, on Netflix. But it's sort of not in the public consciousness as long as Air has been. Like, I'm seeing billboards for Air, but I'm also seeing reviews for Air constantly. People are talking about Air. Like, it just is everywhere because it's a big movie theater experience and event. And so I'm hoping that this is a turning point where we're going back to theater movies.
Oh, man, I hope so. Could you imagine if Maverick never got released in a theater?
No!
I can't even imagine.
Can you imagine how sad I would be?
That would be one of those movies you watch and you're like, why did I not see this in a theater?
Yeah.
Because it almost came direct to streaming. That's what's so crazy about Maverick.
No.
All right, that was a little uplifting.
I feel pretty good about that. It also means more jobs for us. If they're trying to release that many movies, boom. Let's go.
I hope Netflix does the same.
Yeah.
I feel like Netflix has some good things, good movies, Knives Out 2, maybe even Murder Mystery, things like that. I don't know if I'd see Murder Mystery, but there's certain movies I'd see in a theater, no question.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay. Should we move on?
Yeah. Uh-oh, bringing us back down.
No. It's a little AI conversation. We've talked about it. I feel like we've been ahead of the curve on AI. And by ahead of the curve, I mean, we were freaking out early.
I'm still, okay.
I feel like some people still haven't begun freaking out.
People need to freak out.
There's an article you sent me, which we'll shoot the link of, which is with Joe Russo, one of the directors from the Avengers, and Donald Mustard, who is the head of Epic Games, and they have a movie division. They create Fortnite. And they're talking about how AI is going to influence movies. And it's scary because now going back to what you had said earlier when I was talking about my voice being used for AI and things like that, things can be altered, is that's a real thing. Like I was just watching something where AI or people were using AI to imitate voices and then calling people like family members and scamming them because I would call you Tasha. I'm like, Tasha, I'm sick. I'm in trouble. I need money. I need this. I need that. So we're like entering the Wild West and things are just nuts. I don't know how it's going to affect movies. It's coming. We've talked about it before. And it just needs to be noted again that I don't know what the answer is. Like there's nothing to do because we just have to watch it evolve.
Yeah.
It's scary. Are you scared?
Yeah.
Or are you like,
I'm
whatever?
very scared. You know I'm scared. I hate talking about it. I'm so scared.
You do hate talking about it.
I saw another thing in terms of movies where you just type in, make this at magic hour. Make this at dawn, a chilly dawn. And then it will change the lighting of your shot. Make the face brighter. It'll make the face brighter. Add sound effects of trees in the wind. It'll do that just in seconds. So I don't know. I don't like that it's going to remove creative people from jobs potentially. So many people. It just makes me ill.
Are you going to be the showrunner that fights against AI when the studio says, all right, listen, we want to hire 10 writers, but we're going to take one of the writers away. So we're going to give you 9 writers, and then the 10th is going to be like our AI bot that you're just going to type prompts into. Are you going to be down for that? Would that be a deal breaker for you?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm off the project.
Yeah.
And then enter Josh, who's like, for sure, I'll
Make
run the
them
show.
all 9. Get rid of the others. Who needs humans?
Yeah, here's the good news. Right now, if you embrace it, AI technology, it's supposed to be a tool. Like our computers, we use our computers to write. These are tools that help us in our creativity. And hopefully if we can look at AI in the same light, then it'll be much more bearable.
If it stops there, I would be fine with it.
Okay.
But it's not going to. And that's what makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
You just had to bring up AI.
Yeah. Shit, I should have brought up Mario at the end.
All right, I'm going to move on to an Act 2 email that we got.
Perfect.
Which I really loved because I think it's the experience of so many people. This particular writer, who did not give me permission to use his name, so I'm not going to, says he's 43 years old and he's decided to make a life shift and become a screenwriter. And that is so hard to do. So all the kudos to you for doing that. It's always scary to just kind of shift gears after being in a different gear for so long. And so his questions were around, how do I start to learn about the business? How do I get in there from the ground floor and work my way up? Because that's a very smart way to start asking, is how do I get in on the ground floor and learn, versus like, how do I become a screenwriter? Because it's very hard to transition from something totally different right into something other screenwriters have been doing for dozens of years, right? To get to where they are. And I think that is the right approach, is learning, just even learning what the business is like, right? If you've been in a whole other industry, what is it like? What is development like? What is even development? What is it? And what is production? What do the people have to go through to produce something? And what are the terms people are using back and forth? How does the industry work? How does the pace work? All of that stuff. So I think he's very right to start asking those questions, like, how can I get an assistant job or a PA job or even a paid internship? And so I will say that I've been out of the internship thing for a very long time. But as far as I understand it, they've really cracked down on internships in Hollywood because there was so much abuse of interns that, people were working for free and they weren't getting anything in return. And so I think now the rule is that you do have to be in college and be getting credits at the very least for an internship. Paid internships, even when I was coming up in the business in when would that be? The early 2000s-ish, 2006-ish. Even around then, it was very hard to find a paid internship, if not impossible, just because companies don't want to let go of any money for an intern. If they did, they would just pay an assistant instead and make the assistant do all the intern work, which is basically what they do. There are places to look, though. There are some really great programs. Again, I'm not sure if you have to be a college student for this, so I'm sorry if I'm wrong. But Universal has always had a page program, which is in 30 Rock. The page that's like a real job that you can actually get. We had Nicole Ramberg on here, one of the screenwriters we've had, who's now an assistant for a showrunner, and she came up through the Page program. So I don't know if she was in college at the time, but that's worth checking out as far as internships go. And then assistant jobs, those are also really hard unless you're sort of in the industry learning about jobs from other people who are like, hey, I saw that this assistant job is open. Do you want it? Because also these assistant jobs go so quickly. Like within, just from my experience from both applying to them, but also trying to hire an assistant, I get so many resumes within minutes that I'm good. Like I've got 10 resumes within the first 30 minutes of like sending my post out that I need an assistant, that if you don't hit that 30-minute window, you're kind of done, which sucks. It's so hard. But that's why it is important to be within sort of the system so that you're one of those first people within that first 30 minutes, right? And so I would recommend I think it's entertainmentcareers.com is a website that I used when I was coming up. If you're in Los Angeles or in any kind of surrounding area of Los Angeles, I would recommend any of David H. Steinberg's meetups that he does. Follow him on Twitter, David H. Steinberg.
Yeah, I went to one.
Josh went to one, which should be a This Week in Writing, by the way, after this, that you go to those and there's a lot of other writers there, basically. And some of them may be working in the industry as assistants already. They're coming up. That's a really great resource for you to start asking about jobs. And I don't know, I feel like possibly, entering scripts into contests could possibly be a way as well. Because if you, for instance, I submitted something to a contest years ago, and then I was folded into their system, and I still get their emails where like, we're having a networking event, we're having a pitching event. So agents come and so then you just start to meet people, and it's a slow process. It takes a while to build your network and build connections and start learning about these jobs. But those are some ways to enter the system. And I will do a little bit more homework on sort of what opportunities are out there for people looking for kind of internship jobs and stuff. But that would be some of my basic recommendations.
Yeah, completely agree with everything you just said. I still get emails from the tracking board, which is just like the weekly, it's actually tracking-board.com, I think is a site. And you can sign up for their weekly newsletter, and in there are open jobs, and you can get jobs.
Amazing.
I think you can apply through there. To be honest, I don't like go through them, so I don't know what they are, but I always know they're like entry-level jobs, which is, I think, can be really helpful. Number one. Number two, going back to what you said about like submitting your script. I know that Tom at Coverfly, I've heard this is a partner of ActTwo, so I'm not just saying this. He's really helpful. I've talked to a couple writers, and they've put their script on Coverfly, and if the script is doing well, Tom will reach out to them and be like, hey, what are you trying to do? Maybe I can help you out with your script and something like that.
He very much cares about writers. He's a good guy.
I wouldn't say this. Like, I'm not just saying this because ActTwo has a mentorship with Coverfly. But yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And it's hard. It's first of all, it's great that someone's doing this, because I've met people who just don't want to, who feel like they're just too quote unquote old and they've too established and they don't want to start from the ground up, which I totally understand. Hollywood's a weird place.
Yeah.
Like,
ageism is a real thing in our business.
It is. Yeah.
That's for sure.
It is. But fortunately, there's like contests and things like that where you can kind of get past the age,
Yeah. There are really cool contests in Screencraft/Coverfly where if you win, they will set you up with a ton of meetings with big name producers and executives and various companies. And that's not, the assistant job that's going to help you learn the business from the ground up, but it's going to get you into the process a little bit. So you start to understand the language of what generals are like and how people talk about movies and think about movies. And you're definitely skipping the line in that version a little bit. I learned a lot as an assistant that I wouldn't take back. But there's a lot of different avenues is the good news. It's just all of them are hard.
Yeah. No, it is. But Hollywood's hard. Any industry is hard, where you're trying to work your way up.
If it helps you, by the way, I was older when I got my assistant job because I went through college and I went through grad school and then I had worked a little bit. So I was definitely older than all of the other assistants. They were typically in their 20s and I was 27. Holy shit, I was so young. But I was older.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Than all the other assistants. I don't think this is going to help him. He's 43.
No.
Because most assistants are just out of college. Fuck. I'm going to stop talking right now.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about the meetup that you went to, because you just dropped a bomb. You were like, I'm showing up to the meetup tonight. And I was like, oh, shit.
Okay. Yes. I went to the David H. Steinberg Meet-Up. It was my first one. We've had David on the podcast, and it was great. It was over at Brewworks. I actually missed my writers group for the record. For the record, it was...
I hope you told everyone that you're missing writers group for that, because everyone should know how important writers group is.
I didn't. But I didn't. Our writers group was on a weird week. It was on a different week. I had other plans that I couldn't get out of. There was something I had to do. So I had a busy night. And I was like, I'm going to go pop into the David H. Steinberg meetup for like an hour before I have to go and handle my other business. And so that's what I did. And it was, I wish I would have stuck around a little later. I was there. I met a few people. And it was awesome. It was fun
busy?
to talk to everybody. It was picking up. It was picking up for sure.
And how is it organized? Is it just, I've seen the videos and it just seems like, there are outdoor tables and people just sort of find each other, which sounds like a nightmare as an introverted person, to be honest.
I went in, there was a little flag that David had put up.
Oh.
I actually went to there was another party going on and I walked over to it. I started to introduce myself to people. And then someone was like, do you go to this school? Does your kid go to this school? And I was like, oh, I'm at the wrong mixer. And then that was inside. Then I walked outside. I sat down. I was chilling by myself. I saw this other guy, Peter, chilling by himself. We struck up a conversation. And so I started to talk to him. And then I talked to a few other people throughout the night. And it was awesome.
You find anything out about their writing? Did you say like, hey, what are you writing? What kind of writer are you? Was it like writing conversations? Yeah,
there was writing conversations. People were talking about what they were writing.
That sounds amazing.
It was amazing. And I actually really enjoyed it because and David had name tags. Mine fell off. I was like, I'm not putting this back on. Fell off.
You never want to be known. You just want to run in and out.
Just there and back. But yeah, meetups are really interesting because they're so helpful because you're around people who are like-minded and people who everyone's going through it. We're all writing. We're all experiencing something. You're working on a script, an outline, or whatever it is, and going through some shit. And it's just good to talk to people like that. And it's good to get out of your bubble and meet new people.
I love that. That's cool. Yeah.
I highly recommend the Steinberg meetup, which is happening in West LA again, and then I think North Hollywood soon.
Yeah, they have another one sort of easter side.
Oh, okay. I sprung it on him. I just showed up. I think
he was like, I don't know who you are.
Yeah, who the fuck are you? I'm like, I'm Josh. What's up? Nice to meet you in person.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay.
That's all I got.
That's all I got as well.
Yeah, we did it. We covered a lot.
Yeah. It's a solid this week in writing. Next week, we'll do what we plan to do this week.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
We'll keep everyone in mystery until we get there.
It's a good topic, though. Mm-hmm. Okay. Quote of the day. If it sounds like writing, I rewrite it. Elmore Leonard. Please remember to rate and subscribe. Follow us at ActTwoWriters for more awesome writing stuff. You can follow me, Tasha, at Story Thursday on Instagram or on Twitter at Tasha 3.0.
I'm Joshua Hallman on Twitter. Josh Hallman on Instagram.
And as always, the Act Two podcast is a production of Act Two, a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This episode was edited by Paul Lundquist, music by 414 Beg, which you can find on Spotify.